So I think really to set the stage of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, I think a lot of times people believe that the movement just started in the 60s. While I would offer that a really comprehensive examination of the civil rights movement makes it necessary to talk about what happened in the 40s and in the 50s in particular, especially if you're talking about Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about was when Pauli Murray challenged the interstate travel laws in 1940. That was a huge thing. A lot of times people, young as the Cate scholars, don't realize how important that interstate travel was to the freedom movement. There was a lot of litigation strategy that came as a result of the 1940s. We talk about the double beef of victory when the Black veterans of World War II came and received desperate treatment across the seas and came to Chapel Hill. This was the generation before the 60s. And I think we have to have a comprehensive discussion, not only about the 60s, but about the energy that poured into the 60s and the litigation strategies. The NAACP in Chapel Hill became large in 1947. What a lot of people don't know about the journey of reconciliation that people might be familiar of in Chapel Hill is that the year prior, in 1946, there was a man named Wilson Head. Wilson Head wanted to challenge the interstate travel laws by himself. So he rode the bus all throughout the South, and in one spot, there was a police officer who pulled a gun to Mr. Head's head and threatened him because of where he was seated on the bus. Can y'all imagine where that was? Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So he went back and talked with his friends, Bayard Rustin and the legendary Dr. Reverend Charles Jones, and told him about his experience. They got together and organized what would become the journey of reconciliation. And because of the victories on the interstate travel laws, the NAACP shifted their strategy to a legal strategy, a largely legal strategy. So this is why we see an explosion of the NAACP in the late, circa about 1947. And that's important to understand because when the young people started organizing in the 60s, they were the children of the people in World War II. The people in World War II were predicated in the 50s when we were talking about the legal structure. So we're talking about Brown versus Board. We're talking about in 1950 when UNC Hospitals was supposedly integrated. They started their all-white nursing school, and they did not want to comply with having Black nurses. So General Assembly actually funded a nursing program at North Carolina A&T and Winston-Salem State in the 1950s. I think when I talk with movement veterans, local and national, they emphasize the importance of their work being predicated on much of the legal work that took place in the 40s and the 50s, and the natural tension that existed between the people who did the work in 1950s and these young people who would not wear suits. They had the nerve to wear overalls. They were doing all kinds of sit-ins. They were using up all the good attorneys from the people in the 50s because they kept on getting arrested. And it's really important to contextualize this history about the climate in the 1950s. So I'd like to start with Miss Lily Perry Atwater. Miss Atwater, could you just maybe give us just a visual or photographic history of what the climate was like in the 1950s in Chapel Hill. I believe you graduated in 1957, is that right?
1958.
1958, okay.
And the climate was very segregated. We could go to different stores, but we were always followed around. Can you hear me? No. Oh, okay. But we could go to stores like Robbins and this mic. We were taught to project our voices when I was in school eons ago, but that always being 80 plus is not here anymore. But we could go to stores like Robbins or the store, it was on Franklin Street in downtown Chapel Hill, or we could go to the store in Carver that sold women's clothing. But we were constantly followed like we were thieves, and time you walked in the door before you could even look at things like you can today, people were saying, "May I help you? What is it you're looking for?" And it just, things have really gotten a lot better than they were in the 50s, honestly. When I first, before I even graduated high school, I worked in dietary after school on weekends and holidays in the dietary department. And I started working in dietary at 59 cents an hour. But it took me a couple of paychecks to get my 3-speed Schwinn bicycle from Western Auto that was then located across the street from the bus station, which is no longer there. The hospital, I could ride my bike and park it. I never had log, any of that. And the hospital was segregated. You went in the front door. To the right was the white waiting room and the white water fountain, and to the left was the white area. To the right was the colored area. And there were 2 cafeterias. Patients that were admitted were, if you were a kid, all children were on 7th floor. But when I went to work there as an LPN, I worked on 3 West, which was a 47-bed capacity, all black, 1/2 medicine, 1/2 surgery. It just, stopping and thinking about it just doesn't make sense to me as to why things had to be that way. It just was cruel and unusual punishment, not only for the employees, but for the patients.
Yes, I graduated from Lincoln High School in 1957. So if you think about what can you do, being, the first person in the family needing to go to college. My father had to work 3 jobs in order for me to go to college. Unable to be able to go to USC, which would have been less expensive for us. I had to go to Winston-Salem Teachers College at that time, now Winston-Salem State. Okay, so their program began in 1953 as a result of us knowing that we could not, black folks or colored folks that we would call at that time, could not attend USC. So my experience at Winston-Salem Teachers College was, it really brings back to memory that we had to travel to New York, to Harlem Hospital to get OB nursing. We had to travel to Crownsville, Maryland to get a psychiatric nursing experience. We had to travel to Atlanta, Georgia to Grady Hospital to get pediatric experience. And it was horrible at Grady. It virtually said, okay, if you're white, you could run through the front door. If you was black, you had to go through the back door. It was 11 of us in one room, 11 students in one room. They would send us back home if we went through that first day. Sometimes we took the chance to do that. So it really was an experience. Although I have to say, Grady gave us a wonderful nursing experience in terms of taking care of pediatric nurses. And of course, at Harlem Hospital in New York, we again was able to get a wonderful experience. We did get our public health nurses there in Winston-Salem, and our med-surg was at the Black Hospital, KDB, Remembrance Hospital, which offered nursing, but it was a diploma program. Lincoln also had a diploma program, but the Bachelor of Nursing degree became available, I guess, in the 54s, 50s like that, as another level. And so therefore, we were able, with the support of the government, to obtain a Bachelor's of Nursing degree from an accredited school of nursing. When I finished nursing school in 1961, I was employed at Memorial Hospital at that time. And like Lily said, it was still segregated. That meant that we had to go in the basement to the cafeteria. They made a very big difference in where we could go. I worked on 6 East, which was, again, a white floor, all white floor. And we, as Black nurses, had bachelor's degree, but we were not given leadership positions. So we had to, work that. And then, to think about, I had to orient and train other nurses because I had a bachelor's degree in nursing, but nobody gave me any credit for that or any recognition. And even when I moved to Duke Hospital, segregation was still, this is in the 80s, it was still very much alive. And we had to have Black people to advocate for our Black patients because, it pains me to think about what the Black patients had to go through. And all of you all remember the Tuskegee, experience. And so Black patients, particularly in psychiatric facilities, received the most damaging drug, Thorazine, on the market, had a lot of side effects. Black people were very susceptible to that, caused a lot of side effects for them, and nobody seemed to pay attention. They just wanted to quiet you down, sedate you till you couldn't move, walk, or do anything. It was difficult, and even at Duke, with the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People in 1981-82, the Black nurses, because they were getting rid of all of the Black leadership positions. And how did they do that? They reorganized. They changed the directory. We're going to change differently. We got a new hospital. They opened up Duke North. And so they recreate positions. I had to apply 3 different times to get a leadership position. So that is my struggle with segregation in North Carolina. Thank you so much.
I'm a 1959 graduate of Lincoln High School. So all of us were really close together in that way too. The year after I graduated, I had 2 choices. I wanted to go to college. My family could not afford it. I played football. I was the number 2 lineman in the state, but not for my position, because I was a center at 150 pounds. But I lost 2 games during my whole high school career. I wanted to go to North Carolina Central. One of the high school coaches in our division got the job when the year that I graduated. But the athletic department wanted another person who also played center, who also was All-State. And that was a guy named Charlie Watkins. Nigga High School in Raleigh. He got to that position, and I did not. So I was Sunday school superintendent, assistant superintendent. A guy in front of me, was named Sam Jones, was the superintendent of Sunday school. He graduated the year before me. He was going to Maryland Eastern Shores, and he asked me, he said, "Brad, you got a job here?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you want me to try to get you an interview for mine? It's a summer job." I said, "Sure, I do." So on that Monday, I had an interview, got the job, and I spent 42 years at that one job. Never thought I'd do that. But in the process, when Andy talks about cafeteria was in the basement next to housekeeping that had all the chemicals right down the hall from where we would eat lunch. Flash forward a couple of years, maybe 3, maybe 4 years. The guy I worked with was in the car with me, and we all talked about, man, how long are we going to be in this basement? So we start planning how we were going to go up to the first floor, which faced Kingdom Stadium. That was the main interest at that time, because the hospital now is reversed. So as you come in the door, to the right was the main cafeteria. And so we plotted. And so I went to my boss man. His name was Lewis Will. He was the chairman of the Department of Medicine. I said, "We're going downstairs tomorrow and we're going to integrate the cafeteria." So, "What are you telling me for?" I said, "Because you know we're going to get some pushback." And he was a Jewish guy. So we talked all the time about who were picked on the most. I mean, he was an excellent boss man. He said, "Do what you got to do." So that Monday, we walked in. We had informed the people on the floors what we were going to do. So they knew everybody was eating in the first floor cafeteria. So Hilliard and I got down first. We went through the lines. People behind the cafeteria workers knew we were going to do this. But they were still a little reluctant when we walked in and you could hear a pin fall on a piece of cotton. So we went up. The guys looked at us. I said, "Why didn't you put the stuff on there, man?" So the guys went ahead and served us. We went over. It was so quiet. Couldn't hear a thing. No pushback whatsoever that I heard from anybody in administration. Dr. Wells said, "Well, if I hear anything, I'll take care of it." That was probably leading up to what had already happened. My work in the community. I was born in Northside. My mother got a divorce. We moved to Chapel Hillside. And it was a little rough because I had to assume another role as far as my family was concerned. But that didn't stop me and Rebecca Clark, who stayed right around the corner from me, from doing the work that I continue to do now. Voter registration. I started out dropping leaflets on 54 bypass in all those apartments. That was my job. to drop leaflets and put registrations at doors for students to register who were coming in town. Because most of those apartments built exclusively for students. And so my advocacy started right there and continued. So in 1960, Rebecca said, I need you to come down to the house. So I get down, we weren't doing anything then. So she said, you're running for the Carver board. I said, what? She said, Braxton, you're running for the Carver board. I said, you sure? She said, oh yeah, I'm sure. We gathered information on mostly all the neighborhoods in Chapel Hill, Carver about voter registration. So I knew, she knew exactly how many votes that we needed to get on the Carver board. She said, we need 358 votes. How do you know that? She said, well, she pushed this little paper in front of me. She said, well, the last guy who got on only had 350. So if we get 358, you're in. So we got all the black voters in Carver. We had names, telephone numbers. So it was a big old tree that sits out in front of Town Hall. I had a table and a seat. And everybody wanted to know, what are you doing? These were the white folk in Carver. What are you doing? What are you doing? I said, I'm counting my votes. How do you count your vote? Because I know who's going to vote for me. So at the end of the day, I finished second with about 400 votes. And that started my political career in Carver, which so I was re-elected for 3 terms. I lost my last race, but they thought they were going to get rid of me. I said, oh no, I'm not going anywhere. So I got on the planning board, and I'm still on the planning board. Awasa was formed in 1977, I think. And we had, the legislature dictated how that board would be set up. So Chapel Hill got 4 appointments. Carver got 3 appointments. And one of those 4 of Chapel Hill had to be a university appointment. So that's how Awasa was formed by the legislature. And we are now served by Awasa, continue to be served by Awasa, served by good boards. What happened with the staff, administrative staff, that came over from the university. And so the employees that were in that water department, all of them transferred automatically over to the university.
Mr. Kashif, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
A new school. Lincoln High School opened its doors in 1951, located on Merritt Road, a segregated black school. I started Lincoln High in 1957 from Northside Elementary School. And when I got there, I was a little afraid and intimidated because we were going to the big school. And it was kind of new at the time. But I did have a brother there who was in the 9th grade at the time. So, and I had plenty of cousins there, of course. But once I got there and being there for a while, we became a family, a village. We took care of each other. Learned from, but the books that we learned from was not too good.
And they were hand-me-down from the white school. The covers were torn off the back. The pages were ripped out. But we dealt with what we had to do. And we made the best of our ability, you know? And we were pretty good about doing that. The teachers were like families. At least most of them, they wanted us to learn. Some of them probably didn't like us at all. But, we dealt with it anyway because most of them did love us. We had a principal though, but first of all, let me say, we had, the teachers knew our parents and they lived in our community where we lived. So if we got in any kind of trouble, they knew all of our parents. They could go right to the house and tell them about what we did and everything. And of course, if the teachers told about it, we got on a little. Everybody got in trouble then. We were called the Lincoln High School Tigers. I'm wearing a tiger pen today. We excelled at most of the things that we had to do. In basketball, football, the drama club, the track, economics, the choir. We excelled in everything. And most of all, we excelled in academics because we helped each other. We were proud to be a student at Lincoln High School because we were kind of spiffy students too, you know. We had a principal though who was very strict. He was almost like a general in the army. If you were late coming to school, he would meet you almost at the path and say, look, you're too late for the day and too early for tomorrow. Yeah, and he, oh, hold it to my mouth. I thought I talked loud enough, but there were the good, the bad, and the ugly. There was a good time because we had a great, not a good, but a great football team. In 1961, there was no stopping us. Everybody in town would come to our games. And it was the park was in Carrboro. And let me tell you something, my daddy would walk from home all the way to Carrboro to watch my brothers. They played too. I had a quarterback, a halfback, and a fullback.
Okay, I am Jardine Austin, and I graduated from Lincoln High School also in 1962. Right after graduation, I did not start school. I did not go to college the first semester. I enrolled the second semester at North Carolina Central, North Carolina College at that time. And I was a part of, different organizations within the school. And at the time, we would go to lunch, and that's where, which I already knew, Harold Foster. He was the editor of the newspaper at Central. So he came up to me and said, Jerry, we are going to Chapel Hill and we're going to walk. I said, we're going to do what? And he said, we're going to walk. We're going to get a group together. We're going to walk from college to Chapel Hill. I said, you go ahead. I catch the bus. Because I knew that I was not walking from Durham to Chapel Hill. I would catch the bus to school every day. And we'd go to the bus station, where's the hotel now. And we, only paid a few dollars. Well, not really dollars. We only paid like $2.75 for a trip to Durham, round trip a week. That's all I paid. And my mom and dad would only give me $5 for the week. So you bought your ticket, and that extra was to buy your honey bun. While I was in school, I had honey buns and a Coke every day for lunch. That was my lunch. And so at the beginning of, at the time that we was going to start the demonstration in Chapel Hill, there was flyers passed around, town, stating that we was going to meet and that if you want to be involved, to come to St. Joseph's Evening Church. So we started, and there, what we had different leaders from other organizations, CORE, SNCC. We had John Dunn, Lavert Taylor, Pete Lee. We had Pat Cusick, and we had Reverend Charles Jones from the church down at University Place now. So we met, and what they did, they actually gave us instructions on how to act during a demonstration. Things that we should do, things that we should not do. And, they instilled us on what to do and how to do it. And like during the time that you are being arrested, do not resist. Let your body go limp. That you did not, stiffen up, because that caused conflict. So we went through all these different rules and regulations that we should do. And we learned songs, the songs that we would sing. That was not during the demonstration itself, because the demonstration itself was silent, a silent protest. We was always grouped off with a leader that say it would be 6 people or 7 people or 8 people, whether or not we was always assigned to the restaurants that we would attend. So like each week, and we only did it on the weekends, okay? We would do it on the weekend, on a Friday, a Saturday, and sometimes Sunday afternoon. Mostly Sunday afternoon, we would get together and we would talk about other strategies, things that went well, things that did not go well, and things how to handle different situations. So, doing your sit-ins, which I was in many of them, I was always one that was being assigned to go out each time that we went out. I think my first sit-in was at the drugstore, Colonial Drugstore, and we call it Big John. Big John, everybody in Chapel Hill knew Big John, black or white, because that was the drugstore that you went to. Well, we had Sudden Draw also, but Big John was closer to the black neighborhood. So everybody went to Big John. And so that was my first place, my first stop, my first experience as being at a restaurant or drugstore at that time to demonstrate. It was quite a few of us. I think that particular day, we probably had 15 people there. And we went and we sat down, and which she told us, no, you're not coming in here, get away from my door. So, but we sat and we waited until the police came. The police, asked us to leave. So the picture that you see there is Jordan Austin and James Machine. We went to the Watts Motel. Then it was restaurant, motel. And when we got there, they greeted us with a bucket of ice water. And they poured it directly on us. And that was Jane picking me up from the ground, because when that water hit you, you got up. You was ready to go. And so that was one of the experiences that I had there at the restaurant.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gwen Atwater. I'm really Gwendolyn, but everyone calls me Gwen. I came to Chapel Hill in 1972. And when I first came here, I didn't go right into the classroom. You will be surprised. This person right here, who knew hardly anything about technology, was the first technology person at Lincoln Center. We called it word processing then. And so, after word processing, I interviewed and I got a job at Frank Porter Graham. Most of my teaching experience in Chapel Hill was at Frank Porter Graham. I taught there for 32 years, 2 years in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 2 years in Hampton, Virginia. Also worked at North Carolina National Bank. I wanted to see if I wanted to do something else. But teaching has always been a passion. I grew up in a family that were educators. My mom was a high school English teacher, and my aunt was an elementary school teacher. At the age of 4, I went to school with my mother and my aunt at Mount Moriah Church. It was it wasn't even as big as this room that we're in right now. And they had students from nursery school to 12th grade, all in one room. It was an experience. If I would have had any sense then, I probably would not have gone into education. But I loved children. I had that passion. I was reading at the age of 4. So sometimes when my mother and my aunt were teaching math or a reading group, I had a little group over here in the corner reading stories to them. Okay? So when I graduated from Grambling College, I know Lincoln High had a great football team, but Grambling College also had a great football team and a great coach, Eddie Robinson. Yes. When I graduated, my 3rd grade teacher, she was also my 6th grade teacher, became my first principal. It was an experience. My first class, it was all black students. Guess how many I had? 36 students in one class. Do you think I had a teacher assistant? Weren't even thought about. They were my children from the time they came to school on the school bus until the time they left. I decided, this was my deciding point for being a teacher. I had a student in my first teaching class that made me cry on the very first day. Not because of his behavior, but because he had been moved or skipped from grade to grade. And this child did not even know how to spell his name, and let alone write it. So it became my goal for that year was that child was not leaving out of my class without knowing his name, his address, his telephone number, and how to read if it wasn't nothing but come, run, jack, whatever. It was going to happen. And it did happen. Okay, from there, I went to Hampton. I went to Hampton Institute at that time, but now it's Hampton University, okay? That was where I did my graduate work. One summer while I was there, I decided I really like this area. So I went for an interview, and that was when integration was just, it may have been about 2 or 3 years, but it was quite different from what I found when I came to Chapel Hill. In Virginia, they did not move the students the teachers moved in the very beginning. So at the school where I was, Robert E. Lee, we had 830-some children, okay? Two black teachers. Our classrooms were side by side. If she came out of her door and I came out of my door, we were going to be side by side. We had a music teacher that came once a week. That was one black. And that was it. So it was three of us. All of the cafeteria workers were white. All of the custodians were white. But Sylvia and I, we both taught third grade. We had no trouble. Never did I hear a student when they were going down the hall use the N-word, be disrespectful to the students that I taught. Something that surprised me, my second year teaching there, my parents let 8 of the little girls that were in my class go home with me for a little tea party. Okay? Then, switch, real quick, came to Chapel Hill to teach. We had a fantastic group of teachers, and I also want to say, and parents. Each school's climate is different. It was different. You had some schools that you went in, it was very inviting. As soon as you walked in, you knew that it was a school about children, the whole child. Because when you teach, you can't just teach academics. You have to teach the whole child. You have to get to know that child. I stood at my door every morning and welcomed my children into the classroom. All of them. Because I believe one of the things about integration that was good was the fact that we were trying, we haven't gotten there yet, but we were trying to get every student to meet every student's need, but you couldn't do it if you didn't have all of the right resources. We still don't have it. Just like Betty said, they had books, I did too, used, but it didn't matter because our teacher, my 6th